Leave the White House here a couple hours from now. Ed, Sandra,
all right.
See you.
Blake Berman, thank you.
Thank you. Let's bring in America's Newsroom A-team this morning. Tom Bevan, co-founder and editor of Real Clear Politics. Lisa Boothe is here, Fox News contributor, and David Burstein, founder of Run for America. We were sitting here chatting about Michael Bloomberg and his rise and potentially seeing him on the debate stage, Lisa, and what that might look like.
I think he's going to look terrible. I mean, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. All we've seen from Michael Bloomberg is this manufactured version of Michael Bloomberg. Anyone at this table would look phenomenal if you had hundreds of millions of dollars spent on your behalf that have been put together by pollsters and campaign consultants. And the challenge is anytime we've seen this unfiltered version of him, which we have in recent days, whether it's the comments about farmers, whether it's talking about how there's this cohort of Black and Latino males who, don't know how to behave in the workforce, that comments about stop and frisk, he looks terrible. And so I think the challenge for Michael Bloomberg is when you actually see this unfiltered version of him, and it's not this manufactured version.
But, Tom, is the flip side of that, he can only go up. I mean, expectations for his debate performance, as Lisa lays it out, pretty darn low.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the bad news for Michael Bloomberg is he's going to get it from left and right. He's going to have Bernie Sanders attacking him for trying to buy this election. He's going to get it from Klobuchar and Buttigieg on the right for some of his policies. But the good news for Bloomberg is that it's going to be all about Michael Bloomberg. I mean, he's going to be the center of attention. And if he manages to acquit himself well in this debate and parry those attacks and impress voters, then I think that'll be a boost to his campaign. If he doesn't, if he comes up poorly, if he comes off badly in responding to these folks, we might see the Bloomberg, the boomlet, lose a little bit of steam.
Final thought on that. I want to move forward on to Donald Trump.
I just want to say I'm actually glad we've gotten to this place, right? Because I actually think a fight between Bloomberg and someone like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, is actually the fight the Democratic Party deserves to have. And I've been waiting for it to actually happen this entire primary season, which is two very distinct, different visions of where the country should go. So I'm hopeful that we'll actually get into that because we haven't really had that. Most of these people agree pretty fundamentally. Bloomberg and Bernie Sanders could not possibly be more different in terms of the vision for the party. And I think we're going to actually see that. And look, Bloomberg has a real opportunity here. He's been very smart to skip these early primaries because he's avoided a lot of scrutiny. And now he's going to get it. So we'll see if he's actually ready for it or not.
I want to move on to where Blake Berman left off at the White House. Kevin McCarthy was on Ingram Angle last night making the point that California's just gone too far left. The president sees an opportunity there to drive a red wave. Here's Kevin McCarthy last night.
The pendulum has swung too far. These Democrat policies have made homelessness the #1 issue. And our governor is only taking us further down.
So that was Kevin McCarthy making the point. Governor Schwarzenegger, he gave the president a lot of credit for what he's done so far. He tweeted this last Friday. Everyone knows the president and I have our disagreements, but I want to thank you for sending Secretary Carson to our homelessness summit. We've only solved this if everyone works together. This issue is bigger than all of us. Now it's time for action. Tom.
Well, look, Donald Trump is not going to win California. I don't think anybody's under any illusions. But he is, it's a very bifurcated state, and he is very popular in the red parts of that state. I think the biggest news from his visit to California is this fundraiser by Larry Ellison of Oracle, right? A big, Silicon Valley tech titan who is stepping up and having this fundraiser for him. He's taking a lot of heat for it, but I think that does sort of indicate that there are folks out there that are willing to come forward and support Trump now that might not have been.
They might be worried about Bernie Sanders getting the Democratic nomination
Absolutely.
and instituting, pushing these socialist programs, Lisa, but also Tom's right. President probably not going to win California, but he's got a rally coming up in a couple days in Nevada, for example, which is still a state very much up for grabs.
Well, yeah, but if you look at California, it's not necessarily about the presidential election. You have 7 seats that Republicans lost in 2018 that they would like to recapture heading into 2020. So it's also about those congressional districts as well, rallying the troops in those districts. Also, in elections and campaigns, it's important to paint that contrast. And if you want to look at a state where liberal policies have just destroyed areas like Los Angeles, San Francisco, when you look at what's happening among the homeless populations, literally medieval diseases resurfacing, look no further than those cities. If you want to look at things like sanctuary policies, painting that contrast between lawlessness on issues like immigration, look at California. So it's an important state for President Trump to say, hey, look, this is what Democrats want to do to the country, and this is what I want to do to the country, which is law and order.
Democrat right here.
Well, look, I think I appreciate the president's interest in homelessness. It would be helpful if he would actually be, not denigrating officials and the situation, and actually spending more time trying to help. And I'm glad he sent Secretary Carson there, because this is a real public health crisis all across the country that is bipartisan. It was true under Democrats and Republicans all across the country, and it's been more obviously prevalent in cities. But there are a lot of innovative ideas out there. People working on this in Arizona, in particular, in Phoenix. They've actually, which was under a Democratic mayor, they figured out a really innovative set of strategies to solve this. So I would be curious to see if the president's rhetoric on this actually matches up. It seems that he's more interested in criticizing Democratic policies in California than actually trying to figure out what to do about them.
Well, I mean, it'd be great for local officials who are actually there would address the issue and actually solve the problem.
Well, they've spent. I mean, part of the problem is
their responsibility.
they've spent millions and millions of dollars in these places and not been able to fix the problem. It's a pretty difficult problem to solve.
They're not trying.
There you go. What about John Bolton? So last night he was at Duke University, sort of teeing things up. Among other things, he talked about potential censorship of his book. He says, I say things in the manuscript about what the president said to me. I hope they become public someday. He tweets, but I can't talk about it. How fair is that? But, Tom, there's a lot of people pushing back at John Bolton this morning saying, if you got something to say that would have either been relevant to the trial, or he's also suggesting he's got other dirt potentially on the White House, why keep trying to tease and sell this book? If you got something to say, you just had the forum at Duke University. Come here on Fox, talk about it.
Right. John Bolton's not really coming off very well. First of all, he shouldn't have written the book. He was National Security Advisor just, not too long ago. Mm-hmm. And here he is coming out with a book while the president is still in office, which is very unseemly to begin with. And then, to your point, Ed, he's really done this dance and these teases, check chapter 14 or whatever. It's not a good look for him.
Yeah, David, how do you see it?
Look, I think there's a separate problem we could have a whole show on about the problem of the industrial complex in Washington and people writing books so they're in office and the revolving door in that regard. But I do think John Bolton is a guy with bona fide conservative credentials, and he's a total political operator. Anyone who knows anything about John Bolton knows that. And so at some point he's going to spill whatever beans he has, and I think I'll just wait for that to happen, and then I'll see what he actually has to say.
We'll wait for that. Lisa?
I just think it's interesting how fast everyone moved on from Ukraine. Now it's Roger Stone, it's Bill Barr, and William Barr, and looking at him and how he needs to be impeached and how it's a big issue there. They quickly moved on, which I think goes to show that it was never about Ukraine. The left didn't care about Ukraine, which is why they didn't support President Trump, considering the fact he sent lethal aid versus humanitarian aid. Like Obama, they didn't care about Russia, which is why Obama didn't do anything about Russia until after Trump won, and then suddenly meddling was an issue. So it just goes to show you how the left manufactures these crisis situations to use as a political weapon against the president.
All right, so we're gonna finish now with Bloomberg. We started there, and we're gonna go to a brand new poll. Monmouth University is now showing that Bloomberg is neck and neck with Bernie Sanders, polling 22% each. Other poll, that's a national poll. We're looking at Virginia, Democratic primary, but Bloomberg and Sanders neck and neck in a key state. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, Virginia is actually a state that maybe sets up well for Bloomberg. And again, we've seen him spend an awful lot of money in these Super Tuesday states. So he has been coming up in the polls. It potentially bodes well for him. But again, we'll see how that plays out after the debate. I would also point out, you put up the national poll, Bloomberg at 19% there. But Bernie Sanders at over 30% for the first time in a national poll means he's expanding his appeal among Democratic voters, which is potentially a good sign for him and maybe another point of getting Democrats a little bit closer to pushing the panic button.
Does that make Lisa happy to see a socialist at 31% for the Democrats?
No, I think Sanders is actually probably the toughest candidate for President Trump to face in the general election. That's my personal belief. So, no, I don't want him to be at the top of the ticket, and I think he would be terrible for this country. But I don't think this poll really matters right now, because we've seen, even looking at New Hampshire, almost half of the voters made their decision in the final days before the New Hampshire primary. Even if you look at the debate, 32%, the debate was an important factor in their decision making, which is, again, I'll bring it back to the point I wanted to make before I didn't have time earlier in the segment, is that the debates do matter. And we've seen that. And that was what Biden's undoing was when voters actually got a real close look at him as a real candidate versus just a theory. Yeah. And so I think that's going to be the challenge for Bloomberg.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people will be watching very closely. I know people here in New York who served under Bloomberg as mayor who want to see him debate before they make a decision. Right. So I think it's going to be very important for him. And I know that they are spending, I was talking to someone over there earlier, they're spending a lot of time prepping for the debates. They're taking it very seriously. So I'm sure he'll put his best foot forward that he
Former
has.
Speaker Newt Gingrich had a recommendation for the other candidates on the stage on how they should handle Mike Bloomberg when they're next to him. Here's the speaker.
The key for the other candidates is to recognize if they don't collectively go after him, and if they don't bring up all these things that are beginning to surface and make him answer for them, they're just going to get drowned. The only person right now who could play with him is Bernie Sanders, who has a big enough base.
Obviously, they're referencing comments on minorities, farmers, women. Should they throw it at him?
Yeah. I mean, I think they should to try and stop his rise in the polls. Amy Klobuchar said that. I can't compete with him on the airwaves. I can compete with him on the debate stage. One more interesting fact about that national poll that came out, Pete Buttigieg actually didn't rise at all. He actually lost 5 points versus that same poll in December. Amy Klobuchar was up 5 points. So Klobuchar did benefit from that last debate. I think she thinks she can benefit
Still
from
in the
this debate
single
as well.
digits in that national poll.
Yes, correct.
We also didn't mention that Joe Biden has slipped to third in this national poll. Right. He used to be at the top of these kind of polls. What's going on?
Well, it's funny because I'm kind of having deja vu from 4 years ago, right, where everybody was saying all the Republicans need to team up against if someone wants to stop Trump. All the Republicans have to get together, and they didn't do it. It's not how it works. There's too much ego. All of these candidates are too far into this. They all want to be president themselves. Biden is in that camp. He doesn't really, he's someone who doesn't really know what to do. He's trying to figure out a path forward. He's hoping something works in South Carolina. Does he, if he were anybody else other than the former vice president, he would have dropped out by now, and he's got to hope it's all he's got in South Carolina. If he doesn't win, I think he's out after that, and this debate will be really important for him too. But voters have said over and over again, and his core problem has been since the beginning, he just doesn't seem like a guy who really wants this that badly. And in politics, as everyone here knows well, if you don't have that, there are only so many things you can do.
David, Lisa, and Tom, thank you. Lisa, did you have a final thought?
Well, I was just going to say, again, it's looking at candidates in theory. Everyone thought he's a former vice president. In theory, he seems like a great candidate. You actually see him in practice on the debate stage, really see him in front of voters, and he's terrible. I think Bloomberg might have a similar challenge where, in theory, he sounds great in these manufactured ads. He looks great. When you actually see the unfiltered version of him that is not manufactured, I think that will change voters' opinion. But I could be wrong. We'll see.
All right. No.
Tune in.
Yeah, we'll see.